Thank you and welcome back to our militaryvideos.com. And we're promoting a very important story. It's by George P. Fanala. It's From Here to Hell and Back Again, about a soldier who was mistreated and treated like a POW, literally at a mental hospital in Honesdale, Pennsylvania in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and into the 70s and 80s. He literally was incarcerated for what was equivalent to a traffic stop. And I'm introducing George P. Fanella, his son, who is going to share the story with us because you know that most of us deal with people who have been shattered by a bad experience, especially veterans. And this story might be able to help heal this broken heart that we have all carry around when we deal with medical problems, health problems, etc. He was literally treated like a work slave, and it looked like the equivalent of Auschwitz. So, without too much more, introducing George to the show. We're on militaryvideos.com/the field report. Hey, welcome
Thank you.
back, George.
Thank you, Jennifer. And it's an honor to be on the program. And the story that I have to tell is one that I'm sure many people have never heard, but it's outrageous and beyond belief that something like Auschwitz could occur in the United States of America, but it did. My father, George P. Fanella, was a proud member of the U.S. Army Air Corps during World War II, and he got involved in a divorce where his wife, I guess, was having some sort of relationship with a powerful doctor in the Pennsylvania mental health system, and they set up a scam, I believe, using me, a small 2-year-old boy, as bait in the trap by throwing me into an orphanage. And of course, he went in there and raised Cain trying to get me out. And then they ran a trail of paperwork saying he was unstable. And long story short, there he ended up in a place called Farview Hospital for the criminally insane. Now, the book on Farview Hospital, and you can read this in the book called Cold Storage by Wendell Rawls, is that once you go in there, the only way you come out is in a casket. Free labor for them and torture all the way. And I do mean torture equivalent to a Nazi prisoner of war camp. I mean beatings. I mean peeing on the food. I mean blackmailing, cockfights, human cockfights. And it's all there by Mr. Rawls' book. And it's a horror story beyond belief. And my dad, being a proud soldier, resisted them, and I'm sure he was beaten senseless many times. And finally, they either chemically or medically destroyed his brain. So at age 27, after not knowing much about him, I graduated at Penn State as electrical engineer, went up into this faraway place in northeastern Pennsylvania in Wayne County, found this foreboding prison compound, mental institution, and asked to see my father. And when I got to see him, he couldn't even hold a conversation. He had enough intelligence to kind of shuffle in and to raise a spoon to his mouth, and that was about it. And I don't think he even recognized or understood who I was. So I went to the administration and I confronted them. Said I wanted his file and all his paperwork. They actually turned their back on me and would not address it and didn't give me the file. But because I raised such a stink about it, he was transferred shortly thereafter to the Veterans Hospital near Pittsburgh, where he had the last few years of his life in some kind of dignity. But this man spent at least 2 decades or more in the equivalent of Auschwitz prison camp, and I do mean in every sense of the word. And if you pull up Lou Rawls or Wendell Rawls' book, Cold Storage, or the interview with Studs Terkel that he did in 1980, that will become very evident of what was done to these men. They were used as slave laborers, no pay for most of that period of time, making bricks and other items for the community. They were beaten savagely if they didn't cooperate. Their brains destroyed with drugs. Right out of the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And our family name was disgraced. The Fanella name is a proud name. I had I had my uncle fought in Elsinborn Ridge in the Battle of the Bulge, the greatest defensive battle in the history of the entire U.S. Army. I had another uncle who flew 51 fires and worked for the FAA and so on and so on. And I worked in aviation and missiles during my career to save this nation and the defense of this nation. So the Fanala name has a lot of pride to it, other than this one stain of what happened to my father, George Stephen Fanala. And I want that erased. And if there is any exoneration or reparations to need to be paid for all this slave labor, because the one reason he's a war hero in the sense that he survived this Auschwitz environment for several decades, where most men didn't even come out of the place alive, or they dutifully just sat in a corner staring at the wall and dutifully doing their slave labor and never protested, but they were destroyed as human beings. Because anybody that put up any kind of resistance was beaten savagely, tortured, and as I say, chemically, their brain destroyed. And I'm sure my father was a fighter, if he's anything like me,
Yeah.
and my uncles.
And I just wanted to add to this is that this actually happened here in Pennsylvania, and a concentration camp environment. It didn't look like one, you know. When you walked into the corridors or you look at the photos, it looks like a posh environment, and it is anything but that. And what we uncovered about the hospital, Farview Hospital, is it was repackaged as Waymart State Prison. And it just goes to show you the old saying about kicking the can down the road. Well, in this case, this was one of those stories that got buried. And George is doing a series on this, and we want to help our veterans that have been pushed aside, maybe put into hospital programs that they don't belong in. And this has been going on for over 20 years in the VA system. And everything from overcharging the VA to, I mean, there's been scandal after scandal. So I think as we get to tell George's story in this, I believe it's a 6 to 8 pack. It's a series of stories, and we're compiling it into a book eventually. Right now, it's on the CD format and in radio interviews, so you get to listen to George's accounts of these stories on militaryvideos.com at the Field Report. In a lot of ways, I feel like your dad got vindicated because he's on military videos and his story is going to be told, and he may be able to help veterans, and he's not even here. So in a way, that is vindication a little bit, don't you think?
Yes, I do, and I want to add one more thing of why this was all done. For money. Think about it. Slave labor, they needed bodies in that institution so they could justify funding. The community benefited, the guards benefited. Everybody had their hand in the pot, and they were not about to close that place down and ever release any of these guys, because everybody was making money at the expense of the unfortunate men. Some of them in there for minor offenses and were literally condemned to a life sentence of absolute slavery, as bad as anything the blacks ever went through, or worse.
Mm-hmm.
And that was their fate, so that these wardens and these supervisors and these people in the surrounding area could have a steady stream of income off the sweat, blood, and tears of men like my father.
Now remember, it was a hospital that was fronting other businesses to make extra money on the side, and God knows how much money they made off these people. And do you know that most of the offenses were equivalent to a traffic stop? It was like Mein Kampf all over again. Am I correct or right? Am I right or am I wrong here?
Well, let's put it this way. They looked for any excuse, like I gave you the story about my father causing a ruckus at that orphanage. Any way they could gin some paperwork up to prove and show that you were mentally disturbed or anything. They would conjure up, if you had a minor altercation in your family, we call domestic violence today, they would whip it into a statement in court saying, "Oh, this guy's dangerous to the community. He's mentally unstable." They needed bodies. They needed to fill that place up and keep it filled with slave labor. So they had to generate a steady stream of men coming in there because men were dying in there and they were being beaten to death. They were going, crazy. They were getting frontal lobotomy. So they had to have a steady supply of new bodies brought into that institution to keep the funding up from the state. And they all, like you say, they always put out a nice dandy picture, and the newspapers covered it up. The media in that area just absolutely went along, even though they knew what was going on.
And this happened in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. And the media was doing it then, and they're still doing it now. Just goes to show you why constitutional principles work. Your constitutional principles come from the Constitution, not from people like this, because it was all about money. You're right on. I mean, I think your series is so appropriate for military videos that by the time they go through one, we're going to put a couple videos and links so that you can watch the rest of the series. And if you would like to order any of his stories, we're going to compile it in a collection, because I think what we would do is we would take pre-orders first only, because I don't know right off the bat how this works, because I've never done anything like this. But you get to hear George's story in its entirety in that collection. And George has gone through a lot of work to put his story together. I hope it's in a book format too. George, is it going to be in a book format?
Well, Jennifer, during the virus shutdown, I spent my time working very hard on a book called From Here to Hell and Back. And it talks a lot about my life and my father's experience, because there were ripple effects from what happened to my father was cast upon me, and I had a hard time growing up with that last name. It was cast upon my children. That stain, the rippling effect went on as it does for 100 years. So the people that did this to my father did this to me and did this to all of my children and their children. This has got to be corrected. This has got to be addressed. In my book, From Here to Hell and Back, is a step in that direction. That's how I spent my time.
And we started the paperwork, to clear up his dad's name, his family's name. We contacted the district justice and the Justice Department, and also Pennsylvania. We just started the paperwork. Once you get the paperwork, you fill it out, and there's an expungement phase, and we have attorneys. It requires us to pay for all of it financially. And his dad already paid a dear price with his personal freedoms. It comes down to constitutional freedoms and liberties. And do you know why this story is so important? Because it can happen here, now, and again. And in fact, you're hearing more and more stories of innocent people in jail who are falsely imprisoned, who do not need to be in jail. And I know you guys know, when a veteran or soldier is falsely imprisoned in a civilian jail, you know the story, how it goes. So supporting us at militaryvideos.com, the field report. I'm going to let George take on the rest of the show from here.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I want to emphasize that, we fought World War II against the Nazis to get rid of Auschwitz and the slave labor camps in Germany, and against the Japanese torture of our prisoners. But little did we realize that Wayne County at Farview, a hospital for the criminally insane, exactly the same thing. The only difference was there wasn't any crematoria going on. They would just put the bodies in a casket and then had the nerve to bill the relatives, for the care of these people, the torture of them. And can you imagine such a thing? And then they went on to replace them with another unfortunate human being who's been manipulated and entrapped and being put in that place, be worked to death as a slave laborer. This went on in the United States of America for decades. And when we talk about war heroes, my dad, as far as I'm concerned, was a war hero in the truest sense of the word. The fact that he even lived through this, even to become a zombie, when I saw him, but to have survived this at all, it was a miracle because I am sure that he was a resistor, a player, soldier in the truest sense of the word.
Well, everyone knows the war crimes that were committed in Auschwitz and Dachau. They don't seem to know about what happened in Honesdale, Pennsylvania. That's something else.
That's exactly right, Jennifer. Right under our noses, and people knew about it. The papers, the Philadelphia Inquirer, they all knew. Outrageous that they knew for decades what was really going on, because there were every once in a while somebody would actually, one guy actually escaped from there. And his story is amazing. It's in there in the book. How he hired lawyers and he told the story of what was going on in there, and they just buried it because too much money. They had 40,000 people gather signatures from around the community. They were all profiting from this place. They didn't want this shut down. No, you think they cared what was happening to these slave laborers? They were all putting food on the table of their families. And if these guys had to be thrown under the bus, so be it. It's all in the book, and I encourage anybody, please read Cold Storage by Wendell Rawls, or look online and get that information, and it will literally make your eyes roll back in your head and think that anything like this could take place in the United States of America, and in a time when we were so proud of going into Germany and freeing the slaves from Auschwitz and freeing the Japanese prisoners of war from the Bataan Death March, we were running our own death march. There were people who were worked to death and literally just thrown it out like garbage and replaced by new victims.
I'm stunned that this happened in Pennsylvania, because when we think about war crimes, we think about a Japanese internment camp, we think about Dachau, Auschwitz, yet no one makes any mention of this place in Pennsylvania. It is is it in Scranton, PA?
That's right.
And it disguised itself as an institute for the criminally insane. So therefore, it would make justification to beat these men. And really, the criminally insane, these people weren't even real criminals. Apparently, what you said is they were just bodies. They were not even, their crimes were as equivalent to a traffic stop. They didn't murder anybody, they didn't kill anyone, they didn't do anything wrong. It was because of a paperwork thing that they could write these people off and put them in an insane asylum, and they profited. The hospital was not just a hospital, it was a hospital that made bricks. Like, who would ever think of something like this? But it happened here in Pennsylvania in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and it started getting exposed in the 1980s, in the radio broadcast, which is also archived in the Chicago Museum on WFMT by Wendell Rawls Jr. And it's a compelling story. And by you supporting us at Military Videos, you can see what is going on with our veterans and why so many people are concerned about the mental health system as it stands. Like, how many soldiers are really in need with when it comes to PTSD. We have antidotes, we have natural remedies, we have so many other ways to treat injuries without having to turn to a mental health system that could easily throw them away for good. And one of the worries I always have is, what if the mental health system came and got me and took me away for good? Like, where would my family find me, and who would go look for me? And this is very common for veterans. So
Jennifer, I wanted to say that the men that got abused the most were the men who were never visited by their relatives. This was the case of my father. It was 400 miles on a diagonal from western Pennsylvania to Scranton, and they made a couple of trips, but it was too hard on them, being immigrants from Austria, and the neighborhood furor and shame, and they just declared George, their firstborn son, officially dead. So he was not visited. So those were the kind of guys that were earmarked for torture and abuse the most. And the media. This is what we have. We have to confront the media. The media did not do its job. I'll give you another example. You know, we never bombed the rail line going into Auschwitz. We knew about Auschwitz going on. If we would have bombed those rail lines once going into Auschwitz, it would have sent a message to the Germans that we knew what they were doing and they were going to be held accountable. But of all the bombing raids we had on Germany, hundreds of them, we never had one. And this was all covered up by the New York Times. What was going on, they covered it up for most of World War II, the massive slaughter of Jews and other people in Treblinka and Auschwitz. And the Army Air Corps was never given a mission to bomb anywhere near or any of the railroads going into the death camps because they didn't want to admit there was this problem because it would have been an outcry to address it immediately with some sort of military strike. Well, the same mentality happened with the Parview Hospital for the Criminally Insane. By not addressing it, not exposing it, they didn't have to deal with it.
Well, we're exposing it right now, and we're at the end of the program, but I will say this. One of the biggest concerns all of us have is they come and take you away, and no one goes to look for you, and you're just a name on that list, and your name just fades, and you fade away into this somewhere that no one knows where you end up. And we know that veterans feel this way, and being a war victim, a victim of war, really, in a lot of ways, you've been a victim of this war crime, and it happened right here in the United States. And we know that soldiers feel the same way. Like, these are war crimes that were committed, and it was treasonous and sedition, and this was all going on at the same time. It was like glossed over, and the media was complicit. And we know, as we go into this, I want you guys, I encourage you, if you listen to George's broadcast, because we got a few more broadcasts in us, I think, George. This is just one of many. We go into this great detail. I think what we're going to really talk about is how so many of the people that are incarcerated innocently, falsely in prison, how they feel like they're fading away because no one goes and visits them. And that's one of the biggest fears of anyone, is that somebody takes you away and no one knows where to find you. And you found your dad. You literally found your dad when you were 27 years old. And now George is 76 years old, and your story is going to be very compelling. I want to thank everybody over at militaryvideos.com for allowing us to have the space and time to be able to broadcast on this topic, because it is very much a story of a POW and an Army soldier who came home thinking he fought for his freedoms, only to become a prisoner in a mental hospital and treated as a work slave, literally almost left for dead. He had a lobotomy, and he barely could walk. But there's so much more to this story, and you know what? We might get to part 2. So I want to thank you, everybody, for listening to militaryvideos.com. Please support us. Please support my cousin George Fanala and his story, From Here to Hell and Back Again. Thank you again for this time.